Please excuse the lack of an upload yesterday. I've got the lurgy. I've had a really sore throat. Yesterday I could barely speak. You're probably thinking, good. Bit of light relief, actually. For me, I was. It was nice not to think about West Ham, not to worry about West Ham yesterday, and I guess that's what the win does. A brief respite, by the way, because I did watch match of the day. I did catch up with a lot of the football because I was pretty much bedridden, didn't have much else to do, so I caught up on a lot of football. And I think having watched Arsenal against Liverpool yesterday, oh, that's a worry, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? They've, they're really, really good. That was an excellent game. Obviously, Crystal Palace. I'm struggling to work out whether that's good for us or whether that wasn't good for us. You know, as you know, I fancied Palace to stay up anyway, but I'm not sure that defeat will be enough to keep Leeds down there. I think Leeds have got that sort of bounce back ability anyway. So I think the number of clubs that are fighting it out for that bottom three are sort of shrinking. I just find it hard to think that Leeds are going to be in there. As I say, I've written off Palace anyway in terms of them being involved. So yeah, I mean, but really interesting weekend of football. What I did find interesting with regard to West Ham was the assertion, I think, that basically a lot of people saying, look, David Moyes hasn't lost the dressing room. And whilst the performance from an attacking standpoint, passing skill, all of that stuff was pretty crappy, actually in terms of the team fighting for themselves, fighting for the badge, the manager, whatever it might be, that was all there in abundance. They clearly scrapped till the end. And I don't know if you've heard Angelo Ogbonna's comments. He certainly referred to that, and he said something like, we fought like real men out there, or something like that. But it certainly gave the impression that he was proud of the performance. I certainly got the impression that Declan Rice was proud of the performance as well. And the result, and as I say, when I say the performance, I do mean the defensive resilience of what we saw. So armed with that information, I noticed there were a few people saying, look, see, David Moyes has not lost the dressing room. But having had time to lie on my sofa and lie on my bed and think about it, I actually think it was quite a clever move by Moyes to basically play his old team. Because whilst I think my initial reaction when Gio was reading out the team and we discussed it in the preview was to think he's picked those, let's call them his classic players, he's of Cresswell and Ogbonna, and basically omitted a lot of the new signings. That was because he could trust them with the formation and that sort of thing. I think there is a part of that. He could trust them to battle. I also think that David Moyes probably trusted that those players were more with him than the new signings. Who, let's be fair, I think I'm probably on quite safe ground if I say a lot of the new signings are probably not completely convinced with what they've signed up for at West Ham and what they're being fed in terms of, David Moyes' tactics, David Moyes' instruction, that sort of thing. I think there's a lot more disharmony with the newer players. So I think I was looking at it more. Maybe David Moyes has sort of lost half the dressing room. And I do think it's a little bit... I don't like the term, lost the dressing room, because I think it indicates that everybody doesn't like him. I think there's... And this is it. This is unfortunately where we are nowadays with the lack of nuance and the lack of grey area. It's like everything's binary, or it's either one or the other. So if David Moyes has basically lost the dressing room, that's it. Everybody hates him. Well, maybe not. Maybe actually there's a number of people who still quite like David Moyes, but they've just lost belief in him, and they've lost belief in his tactics, which makes it probably quite hard to do a full rebellion on somebody that you think is all right, but you just don't think... You can like David Moyes, but think he's incompetent, right? And I think that may well be it. So what's David Moyes done by selecting his trusted players? I think he's mitigated the ones that didn't believe in him. Maybe if there was a little bit of unrest. So, by picking... There was no reason to pick Fabianski for that game against Fulham. Following what happened, there was no reason to pick Fabianski. Areola had to come in. But he probably looks at Areola. And by the way, David Moyes has made this situation himself. He probably looks at Areola and thinks, I can't trust him because he doesn't like me. Or he doesn't trust in me. He wants out. Areola must surely want out. It absolutely would have insulted him. Come to West Ham, you can be the number one. Hugo Lloris has retired as the goalkeeper for France. He probably saw this as an opportunity to excel in the Premier League, be number one for West Ham, who were last 2 seasons have been riding high. And that's not happened because David Moyes, basically, I don't feel David Moyes gives him a fair crack of the whip. So David Moyes probably knew, how best can I limit the amount of dressing room unrest? Well, he probably knows that Fabianski is going to be more likely to play for David Moyes than Areola is, to give everything, to give 100%. I think the same thing with Soufal. He knew by selecting Soufal, he knows what he's going to get for him. Okay, we all know what Soufal's the flaws are in his game. It's generally, he's attacking going forward. He's quite limited. He's 1 in 10 crosses come up. Technically, he's not that great. But will he go out and fight for David Moyes? David Moyes knows he will. So he knows he's getting 100% from him. He knows he's getting 100% from Fabianski. Zuma, I think so. While Zuma might not have been here, I think it was Doug in the build-up to the show, in the build-up show to the Fulham game, said that 8. So Fulham have obviously, since the last time Fulham played in the Premier League, have been relegated once. Well, the last time we were in the Premier League and we played against them, the last 2 times, 8 of the players were the same that David Moyes started on Sunday. So these are players that are established for him. And whilst Zuma wasn't part of that, Moyes stood by him. With all the cat stuff and all the rest of it, Moyes stood by him. He probably knows he's getting 100% from Zuma. And it's the same with Ogbonna. He knows by picking Ogbonna, he knows what he's going to get. And you could hear it in Ogbonna's comments, right? And he dropped Agurd. Agurd was an easy drop, by the way, following a Newcastle game. But so was Fabianski. What's the difference between them? Fabianski is totally sold on what David Moyes is doing. Agurd's probably not. He's thinking that new stuff hasn't worked. I'll be dealing with that in tomorrow's video, by the way, about the new players and the transfer policy and that sort of thing. Cresswell. There was no reason, I don't feel, in the last few games to drop Emerson. None at all. I think Emerson's done really well for a number of games. As you know, on Patreon, if you're a patron, we do have player ratings. Last few games, Emerson's got his average marks over the last 6 or 7 games have been really good. But what does Cresswell have over Emerson? Well, he trusts him. And probably Cresswell is one of the few players that is not frustrated with David Moyes. Actually, he's built up his relationship with Cresswell over 2 different stints at the club. When his very last game for West Ham United, in his first stint, he played Aaron Cresswell at left centre-back. That's what he did. He trusts him. Aaron Cresswell probably doesn't have a bad word to say about David Moyes. So he's in there. Now, while Souček and Moyes have had a sort of maybe, not a fractious relationship, but whatever the case may be, Souček knows that David Moyes trusts him. Regardless of how he plays, David Moyes trusts him, so he's in there. You see where I'm going with this, and it's the same with Fornals. Why on earth would Fornals be playing in that position? It's because when David Moyes addresses that team and he looks in the whites of the eyes of that team, he knows that what he's looking at is not a team that's going to have a mutiny. He knows that there's not a bunch of players who are fed up with him. Those are the old guard. Those are the trusted guys. And this is why I think it's been quite smart. Yes, I am aware, and there are players I've not mentioned as well, but you could take it as, well, I think you could take it as fact that Bowen will be playing for him, Antonio will be playing for him. Danny Ings, he played Danny Ings up there. I think the biggest thing, I suspect he won't be playing Danny Ings in the next game. But maybe, just maybe, he knew Danny Ings would probably not be that mutinous. Danny Ings probably not been worn down by the first half of the campaign because he wasn't here, he was at Aston Villa. So I think it was quite a clever ploy by Moyes. I think this is probably what we're going to see against Arsenal, even more so because I think he'll probably take Danny Ings out, as I mentioned. And if there was a load of unhappiness, and I understand that Paqueta wasn't there and Scamacca, neither of those were available. But I think by taking out Agurd, by taking out Emerson, by not including a lot of the new signings, by not including Maxwell Cornet, by doing that, by reverting back to his tried and trusted players, my throat's starting to go again now. I think what David Moyes has done is he's just offset that, he's mitigated that. Basically, there will be no dressing room mutiny. Because the old guard are being reinstated. They're going to be happy. He trusts them. He trusts them not only to get it over the line, not only to defend without complaining, because they get it. They understand about the sitting back and all the rest of it. You can understand why some of the new players are thinking, hold on, it's not what we signed up for. But the old guard, they understand it. And that's why you hear it when they're coming out, the things they're saying, things Cresswell's saying, things Rice is saying. Rice is off anyway, but he's still battled for the team. I thought he played well against Fulham. The things that Ogbonna's saying. And I would have, if you'd have listened to the preview, I would have put Ogbonna in there for exactly those reasons, by the way. Well, actually not the reasons to offset mutiny, but I think it was a safe pair of hands, safe pair of boots, if you want. Clever from Moyes. I think we'll see this for the rest of the season. The other guys are going to have to fight it out for Europe. But it's just been interesting. When it comes to the crunch, David Moyes has chosen his old guard. Well, also it says, because I've been wondering for a little while, why doesn't David Moyes want to keep his job? I think he does. by selecting the team that he selected, by reverting back to type. I think that's David Moyes saying, I want this gig, I want to keep this job, but this is a group of players that not only do I trust to implement my tactics, but these are the group of men who I trust not to betray me.